All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, there are millions of reasons for us to put aside our tribalisms to stop the in-house beefing and focus on the real problem at hand, but yet somehow we can't seem to be able to do that. Now, you would think being able to protect our children would be a good enough reason to put aside all of our differences, all of our personal beliefs, to unify and actually do something about the problem. But we rather blame each other when neither one of us have the ability to get justice if they shoot one of our children dead in the street. Like the young brother in Connecticut, Jayson Negron. He was unarmed and he was shot and killed by the police. Now let's go back and see what justified the shooting of this unarmed teenager, Jayson Negron.
Next tonight, here the deadly police shooting of a teenager in Connecticut, a 15-year-old boy allegedly ramming an officer with a stolen car. And now new video showing the moments after police opened fire. Here's ABC's Lindsay Davis.
These images, taken by a bystander, are raising questions tonight. 15-year-old Jayson Negron handcuffed on the ground with his head facing to his right. The camera pans off, and 4 seconds later, Negron's head is in a different position. The victim's family says the picture suggests Negron was still alive, and they say that contradicts what police told them, that Negron was killed when he was shot. According to Bridgeport, Connecticut police, the officer shot Negron after he refused orders to stop, and he hit an officer with a stolen car on Tuesday.
It's a young man who put himself in a really bad situation and lost his life.
The 21-year-old passenger was also shot, but suffered non-life-threatening injuries. The police chief says Negron's body was lying in the street for about 6 hours after the shooting for evidence-gathering reasons. But Negron's family members say the police never provided him medical attention that they believe might have saved his life. Hundreds gathered last week to pay tribute to the teen and call for action. That officer is on administrative leave pending the outcome of an investigation.
So they say this young brother, Jayson Negron, was ramming an officer, forcing Officer James Bradley to shoot and kill him. Now, in the police report, they said Jayson accelerated and reversed, striking at least one officer, and the officer was forced to fire at least one shot, hitting both Jayson and the passenger that was with him. Now, I don't know how he shot both of them with one bullet, like this was that movie Wanted or something, like he Angelina Jolie out this bed. But their original story was that they shot him and the bullet hit him in the head and he died right there on the scene. Now, the problem is his cousin was there as a witness, and he said that Jayson never hit the police officer with the car and that they couldn't even prove that the car was stolen. And he had video that actually contradicted the whole story that the police gave.
No, they shot him.
Yeah, they shot him, right?
Yeah, they shot that man.
They shot both of them?
There's two of them? One. I only see one. One dude. Damn, man.
So after they initially said they just shot him in the head one time and he died, after his cousin puts out this video, even the police chief, Chief Armando Perez, had to acknowledge that he was mistaken about the cause of death and it was because of a shot to the torso.
Following a developing story tonight in Connecticut making national news. A community reacting now after a video surfaced showing the moments right after a Bridgeport police officer shot and killed a teenage boy.
Police said that 15-year-old was behind the wheel of a stolen car and hit at least one officer trying to stop him. News 8's Bob Wilson is live with a new video that may be shedding light on what happened after that boy was shot. Bob.
Yeah, it has been a long week. It started off, this incident happened last Tuesday. There have been rallies and vigils held, and tonight another rally after a new video comes forward and fans the flames of emotion.
And we're holding the police accountable because that's what we do, because the police work for us.
It was a Sanctuary City rally in front of Bridgeport City Hall that turned into a civil justice protest. 15-year-old Jayson Negron was shot and killed by police last Tuesday after he allegedly stole a car and struck 2 police officers. New video of Negron handcuffed, laying face down on the street has surfaced on Twitter. The video shows him handcuffed on the stomach, facing the camera. The camera dips down away for about 4 to 5 seconds and then pops back up, and now Negron's head is facing the other direction. There is a police officer with him, and sirens can be heard in the background. Police say he was pronounced dead at the scene, but in the video, family members say he looks alive, which makes them doubt the police side of the story.
I think it's outrageous and it's unacceptable. I don't think there's any justification for the police to have done that. I'm sick. I'm sick seeing that video.
And people we talk to say, you have to remember this is just a snapshot in time, a 1-minute window. You don't know what happened before the video. You don't know what happened after the video. And that's why police say this will be part of the investigation, but they're going to look at all the evidence. Now, we did reach out to Mayor Ganem. I talked to him on the phone, and he says, really right now, there's not much to comment on. He's waiting for the investigation by state police.
I'm angry, and this community is angry, and we're standing together. We're not going to just sit back and let this happen. We want accountability for these officers.
Bridgeport police say the officer had been on the job only 1 year and is on leave pending the investigation.
He's so distraught. I mean, the last thing he wanted to do was to pull out that gun and shoot that boy.
Now, 2 New Haven lawmakers, Porter and Winfield, say tomorrow they're planning a news conference as they advocate for more police accountability. That'll be here in New Haven.
They left him out there for 6 hours after they shot him until he died, and they lied about it. Now, this was a 15-year-old kid, and this police officer, James Boley, shot and killed. And all any of us can do is go beg and plead for something to be done. And the only thing that's happened to him is suspended with pay. And then after this blows over, he'll get all of that money back and get right back on the force. And this was his first year. He was a rookie officer. But these officers can make up any kind of scenario, and every piece of evidence that you find when you investigate goes against their story and contradicts what they say, but they still do not get charged. It doesn't matter if they kill your children. Like with the young brother Darius Smith, a 15-year-old out in Cali who was shot by an undercover Border Patrol agent in self-defense, quote-unquote. Let's go back and see what happened to the 15-year-old brother Darius Smith.
A mother is speaking out tonight after her son was killed in an officer-involved shooting.
The officer was off duty and worked for U.S. Customs and Border Protection. CBS 2's Christy Fajardo is live in Arcadia with the details tonight. Christy.
Yeah, Elsa, the officer says he fired in self-defense. A 15-year-old died. His 14-year-old relative is still recovering in the hospital. And tonight, the teen's family is questioning the officer's account.
I'm hurt. Y'all robbed me to the core.
For the last 24 hours, the mother of 15-year-old Darius Smith of Pasadena has wept but not slept. She says she's been kept up by nagging questions over the shooting death of her son by an off-duty Customs and Border Protection officer in Arcadia.
They gonna see their kids tonight. I gotta go back and tell my other 3 that one of them ain't coming back no more.
The sheriff's department says the officer tells them at about 8 Friday night he got off the goal line, and so did 3 teens. Then at Colorado and First, they attacked him from behind. Smith held a gun to him while another hit him in the head, demanding valuables. That's when he says he reached for his own weapon, killing Smith and wounding a 14-year-old. Another teen ran away and was later arrested.
Them boys didn't do that. They ain't them type of boys to do that.
The sheriff's department says the officer had bruising on his face, and investigators found what turned out to be a replica handgun at the scene. Smith's mother says she doesn't believe the high schooler who loved video games and dreamed of playing in the NFL would rob anyone.
First they said it was no crime committed. Now it's a crime committed. Now it's a gun. Then they said it was a fight. I don't know what to believe. All I know is my baby gone, and I'll never know his story.
Sheriff's detectives who have taken over the investigation, though, are hoping video will tell the story. They believe cameras were rolling on the goal line and at several businesses, but say because of the long holiday weekend, they have yet to be able to access it.
So this undercover officer, which they don't really give his name, says this 15-year-old young brother and his friends attempted to rob him after they got off a train in the middle of the day in a busy area in LA. And he says they put a gun to his head and start punching him in the face and all this stuff. And he was forced to reach for his gun and do something. But if they got you with a gun to your head and punching you in the face, what makes you reach for your gun? Now, they say he had bruises on his face, but he didn't really need any medical attention. But at the end of the day, it's his word versus their word. And one of them not here anymore. Now, even though this undercover officer said that these teens were robbing him and, punching him in the face, they all were shot in the back. Darius Smith was shot in the back of the legs. This undercover Border Patrol agent walks up and shoots him 3 more times in the chest, standing over top of him, execution style. Now, of course, they found a BB gun at the scene, so this shooting is, of course, justified. And with Jayson Negron, even though they're still investigating his case, and this officer is on paid leave, Police Chief Armando Perez is still out there defending him. They can't issue a statement on the shooting, but he comes on camera and still defends this officer anyway. Now, as long as we keep pointing the finger at each other, arguing over trivial things, stuck in a tribalism mindset, and fighting amongst ourselves, we're never going to be able to get justice for our children. Whether we agree with what they accomplished during civil rights as far as integration, at the end of the day, black men and women came together to fight for the rights of themselves and their children, for the rights of us. They didn't fight over what they should call themselves, even though they had disagreements. Like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X had disagreements, but they realized they were fighting for the same thing, and they tried to work together, and they put aside their differences to accomplish those goals, even though they had different ways to achieve it. Instead of blaming each other, we have to be working with each other on things like group economics. We can vote on a committee strictly in charge of funding and helping grow black businesses that we all contribute to, rich, poor, whoever you are, whatever group you belong to. If you can send $1, send $1. If you can send $1 million, send $1 million. But if we can grow black businesses, we will be able to employ each other, which will cut down on the crime rate in our own communities, the quote-unquote black-on-black crime. We'll be able to build schools because we'll have the resources to be able to do so. We'll be able to institute our own curriculums in the schools. We can teach our kids about investing, saving, how to spend money, how to let money work for you, how to be successful people, to teach them to be doctors and lawyers and judges and the business people of the future. Our ancestors have left us the blueprint on how to do all of these things. But the problem is, at the end of the day, back then, when we had our family unit structure together, the crime rate was still high because they charged them for crimes for everything, and they still had to deal with the racist system that they were in. Even though the family unit was intact, they were dealing with lynchings more than ever. Before black men and black women had this problem with each other, we were millionaires together. And they came in and burnt everything down and destroyed everything. Our problem has always been being able to protect ourselves. We have to learn how to protect ourselves. Stop turning that negative energy inward and transform that energy into the motivation that you need to protect yourself, to create a future for your children to be able to thrive in. And if the future and safety of our children isn't enough to do that, then I don't know what will be.
They still got the kid, the 15-year-old kid on the floor, dead, handcuffed, with no blanket covering him whatsoever. He's been there since 5 o'clock. And it's been, what, like 5-6 hours already? This is fucking crazy. Protesters. 5 hours later, they wanted to pick his body up from the ground. I seen it all. I fucking seen it all, y'all.
An attorney for Smith's family and people in the community say they don't believe the law enforcement narrative of what happened Friday night. Smith was with his two friends, also teenagers, in the area of First and Colorado in Arcadia. An off-duty Customs and Border Protection officer who works in San Francisco at the airport there but lives in Arcadia says 3 teens attacked him from behind. He told investigators he was hit in the head while another suspect tried to rob him at gunpoint. The officer says that he shot the teens to defend himself. Smith died. Another teen was wounded. Smith's family wants the officer who was not arrested to face criminal charges.
Darius Smith was executed. He was not in the midst of a robbery. He was shot twice in the legs first. He was felled, and his shooter got over him and shot him 3 times in the chest. That's a murder. That's not subduing a robbery.
We're asking folks to stand alongside the family, because right now the family is mourning. And Darius was a child of God. He was a good kid. He's an aspiring football player, and we're asking that justice be served.
Abdullah and Merritt say that they say all too often that young black men are being portrayed as criminals when, in fact, during events like this, they're saying that that is not the case. They say that the 2 teenagers who were with Smith are facing robbery charges, and they believe that those charges against those teens should be dropped.
Stunning video in court today showing a man shooting his teenage neighbor.
Tom Murray joins us live outside the courthouse to show us what happened in the courtroom today. Tom?
Mike, Carroll, an incredible day for the jury in this trial of a white senior citizen accused of killing his black teenage neighbor. Today, jurors saw home surveillance video of the actual shooting. They heard from the victim's mother, and they heard from the suspect in his own words. 76-year-old John Spooner on trial for murdering his teenage neighbor. Darius Simmons was a 6th grader, 13 years old. The boy's mother watched it happen.
I asked him why he got that gun on my baby.
And where are you at when you asked Mr. Spooner why he has that gun on your baby?
I'm in the doorway.
Spooner has a home surveillance video system that captured the confrontation and shooting. Jurors saw Darius Simmons move a garbage bin from the curb. Spooner went into his house. Moments later, Spooner comes out of his house as Darius heads back toward the curb. You see Darius move backward as Spooner comes toward him with a gun. Spooner appears to point the gun toward the boy's mother, standing in her doorway. While the jury saw Spooner fire the gun, we are pausing the video just before that happened. Simmons' older brother testified about rushing to his brother.
And what were you doing as your brother's in your arms?
Talking to him.
What are you saying?
My little brother wasn't saying nothing, like talking to nobody.
And what are you saying?
I was crying. And at the same time, mad, because he's still on the corner with the gun.
Then another video. Prosecutors played Spooner's recorded interrogation. The audio is difficult to hear. We did our best to transcribe.
Did you shoot somebody with that gun? Yes, I did. Who did you shoot? I guess a 13-year-old kid. When you say you guess, that's what his mother said. Why did you shoot the gun twice today? I wanted either my shot or back.
So the defense is expected to begin presenting its side tomorrow, and they are conceding that the shooting happened, but are going to try to prove that Spooner did not mean to kill his teenage neighbor.
As you may know, since January of this year, at least a dozen cases of police violence have been reported across the state of Connecticut. 4 young people lost their lives as a result of police escalating nonviolent encounters, engaging in high-speed pursuits, and using lethal force against unarmed community members. That's 4 young lives ended by police violence in less than 6 months. When these incidents happen, we're always told to wait for the facts before taking action. So let's go through some facts. February 4th, New Haven activist Norm Clement, who's here, where you at, Norm? and Nate Blair were violently apprehended by Connecticut State Police, who arrived at a protest with dogs that were so riled up that they bit several officers. Nate suffered a concussion in the incident. On March 9th, here in Waterbury, as Clinton shared, his son Rashamel Rogers was shot 3 times after being stopped on suspicion of a non-violent offense. Thankfully, Rashamel survived. On March 29th, Austin Carr was shot in the face by Bridgeport police. Thankfully, he survived. On May 9th, as many of you know, Jayson Negron and Julian Fife were stopped on suspicion of a non-violent offense. Julian and Jayson were both shot by Officer James Boulay and left handcuffed in the street, and according to Julian, rendered no immediate aid by police. Julian survived. Jayson died in the street, where his body remained for 6 hours following the incident. A video shows Jayson's body in the street, handcuffed. So he was shot in the chest. They laid him down on top of his wounds, handcuffed, and let him die in the street. He was still moving in the video. So I want to talk about Connecticut General Statute 14-283, which states that police pursuits are justified only when the necessity of apprehension outweighs the danger of pursuit. We're talking about the danger to police, suspects, and bystanders. Even with this policy on the books, on January 26, 2017, Vincent Kuda Folks and his brother Sean Bowman were chased by Norwalk police, and their families here today. 19-year-old Sean suffered a traumatic brain injury, and 22-year-old Kuda died as a result of the crash. Kuda, Dion Pittman, and Joseph Edward Rothenbucher, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, so I apologize if I'm not. All 3 of these young men lost their lives in police chases in Norwalk, Waterford, and Bethel. That is just in the last 6 months. We know the facts. The fact is that police violence has ended the lives of far too many young people, particularly Black and Latinx youth in our state. We have been repeatedly told that Connecticut is somehow different, and that we've all heard we've just all heard the news of yet another acquittal of an officer in St. Paul, Minnesota, who ended the life of Philando Castile. Connecticut is not different, and we have to reckon with that truth. We are not different, but we can be different. We are all here today, I'm assuming, because we're all committed to ending this pattern of violence. I want to hear you shout if you're committed to ending this pattern of violence. I want to hear you raise your voice. All right. We're all here because we're committed to that. And we can demand common sense reforms like policies mandating the use of body cams. We can demand all civilian review boards with the power to investigate and hold police accountable for misconduct.
Good job, buddy. Here, grab a can. Good boy. Good boy. Ouse. Good job. Put your hands behind your back.
Hey, I was coming back, man. I was doing drugs and I didn't know what I was doing. You hear me?
Come on, get up.
Hey, buddy, sir, I'm on drugs. I just wanted to apologize, man.
Come on.